Welcome to Kenmobi's Street Brain Radio. I am walking in Shibuya now. I'm on the way to the Voice Corporation where I'm going to record a session. This is an internet-based radio service, and I have a program, but this is something extra. I think I'm going to collaborate with a corporate person, which I am really looking forward to. Shibuya today looks a bit rainy, and so it's interesting. Anyway, today I would like to talk about small world network and contingency. This is a very interesting topic, and although small world network was very much in the boom some 10 years ago, I think, but it has somehow gone out of focus. That's my feeling. But at the same time, I think it is becoming increasingly important to be aware of the effects of small world network. So in this episode, I would like to revisit this very important and interesting concept and come to a new vista, if I may, with you listeners during this period. So small network is technically defined as a network where there is a coexistence of regular and random connections. So if you have only regular connections, that tends to define what local is, and you actually are connected to the local agents in an ordered way. So for example, if you are in a class in a school, then probably you would know all the schoolmates, and probably the distance between you will be different depending on personal relationships. But the fact is that you are acquaintances, so that defines the social network in the classroom, and that is pretty regular. When it comes to long distance connections, for example, my connection with the United States, I have some friends in the United States and Canada and in the UK and in South Africa and in Singapore and in China and so on. So these long distance international connections are not so regular. I mean, they tend to be random because it depends on idiosyncratic circumstances, and it doesn't have a regular structure like the classmates network in the school. So there's this really strange advertisement truck running. Shibuya is the capital of advertisement trucks, and that is one of them, I think. And anyway, so where was I? Yeah, so the human society is composed of regular and random network, and completely irregular network would not be much interest in terms of cognitive phenomena. For example, the crystal structure of ice is very regular, but it is not very interesting cognitively unless you go into extreme quantum consciousness domains. A random network is very hard to find, I think, in nature, apart from very conceptual possibilities, and that also is not very interesting. Of course, some people analyze random networks from theoretical point of view, but that is not cognitively very interesting. So the interesting domain is somewhere in between, one in which the regular and random networks coexist, and that is the domain of small world networks. So small world network technically is a network where there's a coexistence of random and regular connections, and that is when things get really interesting. And for some time, people have studied the connections on the internet, for example, and they have found that the connection is typically represented as a small world network in which regular and random connections coexist. And if you look at the neural networks in the brain, it is a small world network also, and it actually gives you the possibility of handling information in a very robust way. And famously, there's this famous classical experiment, but I need to stop here for a moment because I'm actually coming to the office where I'm going to record this internet radio program, so I'll come back to you later. So now I'm in Shinjuku. I'm in a very busy underpass in the west side of Shinjuku. And I have finished my recording, and this is quite interesting. There's a public speech of a politician going on, a very famous politician. And actually, I know him personally. Oh, this is amazing. I need to stop here. So I passed that area where a member of parliament was giving public speech. I know him personally. Taro Yamamoto, a famous guy. It was really fun to see him there. Japan is going to have a series of local elections in April, so I presumably Taro Yamamoto is preparing for that. So anyway, I was kind of surprised to see him there. This is a small world network, so this is what I'm talking about. So if we go back, the small world network is where you have both random and regular connections, and that was a random connection. Seeing Taro Yamamoto in the underpass of the west side of Shinjuku. So life is full of these events, and this is contingency. Contingency is the coexistence of random and regular events. If everything that we experience is regular, then that's not much fun. We will be able to predict what's going to happen next. But when things are completely random, that is not very interesting too. So, gamblers might get a kick out of watching a pair of dice rolled over. But that's a completely random process. So it's not very interesting. Of course, there's such a thing as a gambler's fallacy, where gamblers tend to assume that, for example, after two consecutive six, maybe you get another six, or maybe you would get something completely different. But these are all illusory assumptions. The fact is that even after a very odd sequence of events, it's completely equal. The probabilities are completely equal. So there's no regularities there. But we do have this illusion sometimes that there are regularities, and that is an illusion. So that is called gambler's fallacy. And some people suffer from that. And, Anyway, so as I was saying, completely random events are not so interesting. So the interesting events fall somewhere between regular and random events, and that is where contingency holds. So contingency is where you have a interesting mixture of regularity and randomness, and that is actually where the domain of cognition resides. And the contingency was famously studied by the French philosopher Henri Bergson. And Bergson thought correctly that contingencies are what life is made of. Life is made of contingencies, and our job is here to adapt to contingencies, interesting contingencies. So that situation where I bumped into Taro Yamamoto, giving a public speech in the underpass of West Shinjuku was a complete unexpected contingency, and I had to handle it carefully because if I go very closely, I might be recognized, and so I might be summoned to the stage, and that would be rather embarrassing. Not to mention the fact that I am rather in a tight schedule today, so I won't be able to have the luxury of, interacting with Saru Yamamoto on the stage. So I needed to, handle the situation carefully. So that's how you adapt to contingencies. So people talk about contingency plans, and that is necessary because not everything is predictive or predictable. However, you do need to make some plans, even if there are some random elements in the foreseeable future, because not to have any, predestined plans would be terrible. So you do need to have some plans, and that is so called the contingency plan. For example, if some natural disasters occur, there are things that you could predict more or less the number of items to be needed, and likelihood of each magnitude of disasters and so on. So that is contingency planning, and you do need to plan these things. Otherwise, you would be really bad off. But it's an art really. I mean, to make a contingency plan, and actually, life is all about contingency planning, isn't it? I mean, how you study, how you work, how you make money, how you associate with people. All of these involve different aspects of predictability and unpredictability, and that is how you actually make contingency planning. And the key insight here is that the contingencies in life come from the coexistence of regular and random connections, and that is where the small world network comes into vision again. Because let's face it, I mean, if all our connections are regular, then everything would be pretty predictable. We wouldn't be worrying about different things in life. If we are living in a small village and I'm in a great hallway of the Sumitomo building in the western part of Shinjuku, so I think the sound environment has changed. And so if everything was regular, there wouldn't be too much to worry about. If we were all living in a small village, then life would be very simple. Although we might have some nasty neighbors, that would be as much as we get. But in the world where there are random connections, you don't know where your next influence is coming from, and that is when you become really hard up to make contingency plannings, because otherwise you can't live life in a robust manner. So because we are living in a globalization, globalization means that there are long distance random connections. Here random means out of context. Probably we need to discuss what is meant by randomness later in this program. But randomness is something that is out of context. We have contextual understanding of environment at each period of our time, life, and But you actually need to adapt to that context. That is important. But adapting to one particular context only often means that you are inflexible. You, of course, need to adapt to your local regulations like schools and companies and nations and so on, or cultures or even family members. But if you adapt too much, that would be over-adaptation. You would be hard-pressed to make different reactions when different contexts come to you, and that is contingency. So contingency, the source of randomness comes from the source of randomness is to be found in the network architecture that surrounds you, and those random connections, long distance connections that are so ubiquitous today, are the source of our embarrassment and also source of our interesting opportunities. Really, I'm coming to a place where I need to stop again. I'm stopping now and then to make ways to adapt to the contingency. But anyway, I need to stop again. So see you later. I'll probably talk to you later. So anyway, see you. So I'm back on the street, but now I have to go to Asahi Culture Center, which is what you call a culture center in Japan. It is kind of a community college, and I give a public lecture there once a month, so I need to be going back. So we have been discussing some of our network and contingencies that involved, and that is something that our emotional system handles. Emotion is about handling uncertainties. If you look at dopamine, how the dopaminergic neurons are activated and how dopamine is released, it adapts very well to situations involving uncertainty. So in a sense, the release of dopamine is a network phenomenon. Although a brain, each of us is configured in the local manner, and it's compact network. It is a local network phenomenon when dopamine is released, and interestingly, as I mentioned, the neural network in the brain is a small world network. So we have a continuous structure of small world network from within the brain to the social interaction that we have. So there's a continuity of small world network and contingencies involved from within the brain to outside the brain. So in that sense, we have ubiquitous small world network and contingencies. Now I'm coming to the elevator hall where I have to take the lift, and I would go to the Asahi Culture Center. So I will stop the recording here. It is rather short, but this is where I need to do my street brain radio recording. This is why it has been a great invention, because I can do the recordings in fragments. As you can probably guess from the sound, it is raining in Tokyo. This is the morning after, and I continue my discussion on small world networks, contingencies, and so on. So one of the things that is apparent in today's world is that we are living in a world of contingency, right? We cannot fully predict what would happen next moment. So there would be always black swan event in which even the experts couldn't predict the outcome, or indeed the occurrence of an event at all to begin with. So we should be prepared for that. And as I have been arguing, our brain, emotional systems, emotion-related networks take care of that. So this is great stuff for science, and looking at it from the point of view of behavioral economics, for example, or neuroeconomics, is quite interesting. I'm running again because I need to being time for the traffic light. So that's one aspect of today's world. But however, it's quite interesting that when we follow these arguments, the assumption is that the self doesn't change. The variations, unexpected things always come from the outside, and we are actually not having taken the caption. So this is actually a few days after my last recording on Small Network, and I've been busy, and there has never been such a long break in my recording of Kemogi's Free Brain Radio. So I think I better wrap up and make this publishable format. So I think the world is increasingly becoming unpredictable because of the scalability of the network that we are in. Because whatever happens in remote distance regions in the world is going to affect us sooner or later. So we are all connected and we are all in this. So I think in that sense, consciousness can be a barrier to enlightenment, because when we are self-conscious, we are concerned with only the things that are around us or within us. And as I said, there are contingencies in ourselves too, but we are most of the time unaware of them. And at the same time, we tend to think that private concerns are the most important things in the world, whereas in order to take care of private concerns, we really need to take care of the whole earth. Otherwise, for example, climate change would affect our self-consciousness, affect the state we are in sooner or later. So this is about scalability. We are, of course, occupying a certain space in the network of within and without the brain. And, we are, of course, concerned with our happiness. But in order to make you happy, in order to make me happy, we really need to, somehow connect to and be aware of the various things that are out there. The whole totality of the diversity of the Earth ecosystem, both in naturalistic and humanistic ways. So in that aspect, I think we really need to see ourselves in a scale-free way, in the sort of the fractal viewpoint of the world, because increasingly selves are becoming scale-free. We tend to exist at every scale of the network that we are in. So that if we don't take care of things that could occur in remote regions in the world, we would be worse off sooner or later. So that would lead us to a really wonderful case of mutual altruism on the ground scale. We really need to take care of everybody else in order to be really happy on the individual level. Otherwise, we couldn't build a bright future. And I think that's the harsh reality of it. Well, it's probably not harsh, it's the warm reality. It's a warm love that we need to bestow on ourselves and bestow on the world at large. So with that thought, I will close my recording in this episode of Street Brain Radio. Actually, I am in the middle of my morning run on Tuesday in Tokyo. So this has been such a long recording. I almost forgot what I said earlier in this recording. Well, I do remember the gist of it, but I don't recall the details. But anyway, so to sum up, we are living in a world where we are dependent on each other in an increasingly large network of relations and correlations and causal connections. And within that zeitgeist, we really need to take a mindful approach to maintaining the world and ourselves. And unless we are also aware of things that occur remotely from us on this mother planet Earth, we cannot take good care of ourselves. And in that aspect, in today's world, if self-awareness exists, it should exist in a scale-free way, not like the fractal nature. So we would all be becoming our fractal selves on a scale-free universe, and that is probably the most wonderful blessing of our time. So with the thought, I keep my morning and also close this episode of Switch Brain Radio. Thank you for listening.